نحمده ونستعينه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبد الله ورسوله صلى الله تعالى عليه وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبع سنته إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلوات الله وسلامه عليه وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. ثم أما بعد، فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. We begin by praising Allah, Lord and Majesty, Lord of Honor and Majesty Most High. Yeah, you normally get oversound issues with my voice. Allah pray for that. Right, you will normally. We begin by praising Allah, Lord and Majesty of Honor Most High, and we seek refuge in our Creator from the evil of that which we have done and that which still lurks as potential in our nafs. And we testify collectively أن لا إله إلا الله, that there is no God but Allah, alone and without partner, to whom all power, praise and dominion is due, and whom we shall all be returned. And we further testify that Muhammad, the son of Abdullah, is the message of Allah. Ya Allah, shower your copious prayers, blessings and peace upon the noble messenger, his purified family, and the righteous ones from amongst his companions, and that whosoever follows his sunnah with excellence until the last day. And Ya Rabb, count us from amongst them. To proceed, the best of speech is the book of Allah, and the best of guidance is the guidance of our Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sallam. And the worst of matters in Islam are those newly invented affairs, that which is put in it but that is not fitting of it. Each one of these constitutes a heresy. Every heresy will be connected to innovation, and every innovator will find its place in the fire. وَنَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنْ ذَلِكَ. And we seek refuge in Allah from such an evil destination. After seeking refuge in Allah from the one who is stoned out of Jahannam, thrown out of Jannah and placed into his waiting position in dunya to lead his followers into Jahannam. In the name of Allah, Master of mercy in this life and the next, Allah Most High, He states, O mankind, no, He didn't say Muslimin here. O mankind, have a guarding awareness of your Lord. Be aware that Allah is watching you. The one who created you from a single soul, split the soul into male and female, and spread on the earth many men and women. And have taqwa of Allah, by whose name and whose right you seek your mutual rights amongst yourselves. And do not cut the ties of the womb. Do not break those ties of blood that Allah bound, because Allah is watching you. O you who believe, have taqwa of Allah and speak a true word. And I ask you, my brothers, and I ask you, my sisters, is there any truer word than La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah? Allah. It may be due to this word that Allah will forgive for you your sins, rectify for you your state of affairs. And whomsoever obeys Allah and His Messenger with His Shahada, he's already achieved the greatest success. O you who believe, have taqwa of Allah, and do not die except as Muslimin. Alhamdulillah, thumma alhamdulillah, thumma alhamdulillah. We live in a place that is beautiful, in a time that is beautiful, and we are blessed with beauty. And Allah, it brought a smile into my face after coming here after a long time, to see that finally the project has been blessed of establishing a masjid here. I remember someone told me once, in our town where there weren't many practicing Muslims, right? And both of us ended up becoming alumnus here. Don't become too it's ghurur in our language, right? Don't become too deluded with yourselves. You people are nothing that special. Allah is choosing you for a job, and that job is to spread that His deen in a land that has not been spread before. So the fact that you have this project, I'll mention it again at the end, it's something for yourselves, and if you are able to establish it for yourselves, you have the actions and the value of the actions of the Sahaba. What is the value of the actions of the Sahaba? When Uthman radiallahu anhu bought his ticket to paradise by sending another caravan fi sabilillah, the Prophet said to him, do what you want, Uthman, you're in paradise after this day. And then he turned to the Sahaba, and they recorded words for us that we're hearing this day, over 1,400 years after they happened. Which is what? No one can match the actions of my Sahaba, of those who come after them, even if they spent 2 mountains worth like Uhud. And Uhud, it dominates the horizon as you come out the Haram, right? Of Medina. Why? But there's Umar radiallahu anhu mentions in Tafsir al-Qurtubi, nobly, the Spanish scholar, that the actions of the Sahaba were why? Because the Muhajirun, they brought Islam into the world in a time when it was strange. Those who are doing the same work, they expect the same reward. So Tafsir, may tuba lakum. May there be a tree of paradise for whoever plants and whoever works towards this blessed project to establish a house in the houses of Allah, in a land or a place where it has not been established before. And may Allah give you tawfiq to make it a blessing and make it easy for you. On that good news, I have darker and more difficult news to deal with. We live in a time, and today the topic of the khutbah after that rather circuitous introduction is standing for the Uighurs around the world, right? There are khatibs now around the members of the world who are addressing the issue of the Uyghur people. One of the first things to know is what Shaitan promised us is nothing but ghurur. We see the suffering of the Muslims in the lands of the East and the West. We see it in Palestine. Then we see it amongst the Uyghur people. We see it with the people in Burma. There are people suffering where we don't know. But then we see signs from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala what happens when people get together. We see it in the land next to Pakistan, right? When the land next to it is suffering, but for a short while. For those who understand, right? This is what is coming for this situation. But there I want to share with you some good news. Last year, there was a gathering of many thousands of people in London outside the Chinese embassy. This year will be in DC, in Brisbane, and in London. Those who are capable of attending the event, I want actually the brothers to do one thing. I've never ever requested this at a khutbah. I'll never request it again, probably. If you can take your mobile phones out now and Google stand for Uighurs with a 4, you will find them. You will find them on Google. Those who can attend. Because one of the things that we see this Muslim suffering and we can cry. There's brothers from Palestine here. I can't watch the news anymore. Because if you need to watch that to get motivated, there's something wrong with you. But there are answers that can be done. The Uyghur people themselves, I believe in this. Whenever our people are suffering, they should be put forward and we should ask them what do you need rather than tell them what they need. And what they've told us time and time again, our brothers and sisters of the Uyghurs have told us, the people who have had the most massive impact in changing public policy and driving our project forward are not those in the West. China doesn't care about them. It's the Muslimin in the West that can drive their message back to their lands. That has actually made a difference with them. These are not our words, these are their words. So that momentum needs to be built. I want to give an example. I'll hide the sister's name for the sake of her dignity. When they were torturing her in China, she cried out, Ya Allah. And they said to her, go find your God. She was married to, mashallah, and she was married to a Pakistani brother. When he found out what was going on, he threatened the Chinese government to expose them and they released her after a month or two. So don't think that while the collective reality is beyond our scope, these are political moves beyond our scope, and there are those political moves who are moving. May Allah bless them for those who are working in the sake of Allah. The individual actions are not beyond your scope. Allah won't ask you why you didn't defeat China. But Allah will ask you why you could have done something when you didn't. Now that, for some it could be with money, for some like myself it could be with words, for others it could be dua, and particularly for the sisters, don't forget dua. I know myself, every success that I have achieved in my life has been down to the dua of the pious people in my family, particularly the women, right? And dua silah al-mu'min, it is the weapon of the believer. And Allah himself mentioned, the Prophet mentioned, beware the dua of the oppressed. But he didn't mention they were a Muslim, because between the oppressed and the Lord of those who are oppressed, there's no barrier. That's the first thing. The second thing is, if you have wealth, see how you can help it. I remember sitting with a Palestinian brother after we addressed a crowd in Slough. He came up to me and said, Abdul, let's talk. I said, let's talk. I said, how can we help you? He said, the problem we have is when they are suffering, to rebuild the masjid, there's lots of work. The children are suffering, there's beautiful projects. But when we say we need money for lobbying, right, the opposition will gather hundreds of millions. No president becomes president of the United States without the vetoing, standing in front and getting checked by AIPAC, right? But when we say we need to lobby, there's nothing there. There's nothing there because we need to be forward thinking. We need to think and understand how to apply our skills. Many of us work at the corporate level to actually influence change. Similar to this, there are projects going forward. I want to start with a reminder of why the problem is there. Fundamentally, it can be summed up in an ayah of the Quran, the entire hal of the Muslimin. It's in Surah Al-Hashr, just before Allah warns us, don't be like the people who forgot Allah, so He forgot them. And they became rebellious. Now, as a nation, when it comes to our salah, right? And it comes to our zakah, when it comes to our song, some of us do it, right? But there's something deeper in that hadith which indicates what the problem is. The Prophet this narration is in Ahmad, it may also be in Hakim, Allah knows best, right? In itself. Said, يَأْتِي عَلَيْكُمْ زَمَانًا لَا يَبْقَ مِنَ الْإِسْلَامِ إِلَّا إِسْمٌ وَلَا يَبْقَ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ إِلَّا رَسْمٌ. There's coming upon you, O Sahaba, O Muslimin, there's coming upon you a time. There is nothing remaining, there shall be nothing remaining in that time of Islam except the name. And Ahmad and Muhammad. ما في شيء من عمل. His name is there, but what's the actions? Right? And there's nothing remaining of the Quran. And I want you to hear with it, attentive ear, except its rasm. It will be recited over the dead. He's not saying this, I'm saying this. It will be recited over the dead and recited ritually, but where is the action? Where is the study? We'll study for 3 years to open doors to be able to get our careers so we can get married, but where is the study of the Quran to understand what Allah wants us and how we can save ourselves from a situation? Masjids will be full, but bereft of guidance. Now Abu Lubaba radiallahu anhu, a Tabi'in Ansar, he was an Ansari, a Madini Sahabi, he asked, Ya Rasulullah, how could this be? Well, we will learn the Quran from you. And we will teach it to our children, they will teach it to our children. Now, patience, the Ajam now have to excuse us. As Arabs, we have a very harsh expression. It says, may your mother cry over you. People are you stupid or something? I thought you were one of the sharpest men in Medina. Don't you see, don't you see these Jews and Christians? They go into their synagogues and their churches and they will hear their priests and rabbis address them with light from the book, but they exit thereout and act nothing thereupon. Now, from my own ears, I heard this in a certain city that will protect its honor. There were brothers, people with big beards coming outside the masjid and they were discussing the price of alcohol that they could sell in their restaurants after listening to the khutbah. Didn't the Prophet speak the truth? Right? Now, we have to ask ourselves, is anyone in this room having a problem with the fact that Allah could change our state tomorrow? No one. So who's the problem, Allah or us? Now, I didn't say this to bring you down, I said it to bring you up. The Prophet ﷺ said, Ummati kal-matar. My ummah, my nation is like the rain. You don't know what the benefit of it is. That we have a lot of rain here. You think about it. Sometimes the rain is too light or too heavy, but there's the beneficial rain. You don't know when that's going to come. Who knows when that's going to come? Right? The weatherman doesn't know when it's going to come. It's from the Lord of the weather, who sends his angels to do his work. Right? So we have to understand these things. First point. Second point is to understand the history and the nature of the situation. That test for the Uyghur people is related to, it's nothing new, it's related to an ethnic, cultural cleansing program. There are Muslimin who are ethnically Han, who do not have the problem that the Uyghur people have. Right? It's very, very, very similar to a situation that would be occurring in Kashmir, right? Where the identity of the Kashmiri people of being Kashmiri was initially the problem, and then, of course, their faith happened to be Muslim, and then this linked in. We're not downplaying the faith angle, of course, we're not. But if we understand the nature and the context of their suffering, I could have stood here and given you line after line about how people have been forced to be sterilized, our sisters have been forced to marry the Han, and all of this kind of stuff. It's nothing new. Allah tested Bani Israel with worse before. Their children, their boys were taken out and slaughtered in front of them, and the women was taken as concubines. But remember this, for every pharaoh there comes a Musa. In his own house were the seeds of his own destruction, built when he was rushing to attempt to remove it. Because they may have everything, but we have everything above everything. We have the creator of everything, we have Allah. Be muqin, right? Have that certainty, but also act. Abdurrahman Azam, rahimahullah. Well, this is back in the days when the Americans loved jihad because they were backing against the Russians. So before the security service say anything, it's all at that time, right? At this point, right, he was asked a question by an Arab journalist, and he was asked the question: does this effort, this CIA-backed effort, does this effort require men? He said, well, he said, no, the reality is the opposite. The men require the effort. Does Allah need us? Does Salah need us? Does Islam need us? Does jihad need us? Does any of this need us? No, we need it. When you have that mindset, it's like, for example, we have with the global warming kind of crisis, all that kind of stuff. The earth is fine, our mother is fine. Imam Tabari mentioned this, right? That the Prophet mentioned, Al-Ardu Ummah, yeah? That the earth is your mother, and she'll be questioned about how she was treated on the Day of Judgment. She'll be fine. It's us we need to worry about, because when she gets angry, we won't be here. There were many things before us, there'll be many things after us. Who knows? It's us we need to worry about, right? So when you think about it, you put it into your own context, you can move yourself to action. And if you move yourself to action, everyone will know his power. One brother, he may not be great as a speaker, right? But he's a great administrator. He's a great administrator. Another one, he may not have time, but he's blessed with wealth. And Allah increases him in it. He's earned it in halal and he spends it in halal. A sister herself, there's always a mum there. There's one sister, she speaks to the elders, they all listen. She can organize something. She can do something. This is my advice in this situation. And I want to place it in a slightly greater context to give hope. Because I started up, I go down, but we always have to go up. Because if you read the Quran, you see that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sets his magnificence at the start of many of the surahs, in the literary grace of the surah. Then he gives us reminders in the morning. And at the end, he gives us a message of hope. وَصَلَى اللَّهُ عَلَى مُحَمَّدٍ وَعَلَى آلِهِ وَصَحْبِهِ وَسَلَّمَ. بسم الله ثم الصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله ومن ولا أما بعد. Just to begin and to introduce the topic of the khutbah for those brothers who have arrived late. We're talking about the suffering and how to alleviate the plight and what we can do to alleviate the plight of our Uyghur brothers and sisters, and this is part of a Stand for Uyghurs international movement. There are probably hundreds, if not probably, but very probably thousands of khatibs that are giving this, well, not this exact, they're speaking on this topic at this moment. The fundamental point is it starts with an understanding of what's going on. We're not educated as to the nature of how it is. There's an attempt to ethnically cleanse an entire people, right? By removing or sterilizing the men, sterilizing the women, forcing them into atheism, and attempting to remove everything. The reason why I'm not going to go down the negative route is because this was attempted before in communist China. It was attempted before, not in communist China, communist Russia, in the USSR. It was attempted before in Albania. And I remember speaking to brothers who went to Albania, and sisters who went to Albania in the 90s to give da'wah, and they came to a town and they made wudu, and the entire town gathered to see wudu because they hadn't seen it before. And alhamdulillah, within generations, there's a brother from Albania here. Is Islam not spreading in your nation now? There you go. That nod says it all. It's not a khutbah, there you go. That nod says 1,000 words. They cannot stop. I say to those people who are attempting to stop La ilaha illallah, carry on. And while you're doing, do something for me. Drink the ocean and see what will happen. Allah mentions in the Quran. Say to those people who oppose him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, put a rope on the ceiling and hang yourself. See if your anger will help you anything against Allah. It's in the Quran. You won't be able to stop this, right? Because this force is a spiritual force. It's like saying I can reverse gravity. You can't. This is created by Allah. Islam is the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it will become dominant. In the darkest of times, in the hardest of times, I want you to imagine a picture with me that we are digging that trench that Salman al-Farisi introduced as a revolutionary idea, because there were 70,000 of them and maybe 10,000 of us. By fighting men, 10,000 of us, if that, right? And the women were ready, and some of them did fight, right? While they're digging this trench, there's a massive rock, and the Prophet ﷺ is in his, we call it a lungi, like long shorts, bare-chested, and he has a rock. They can't move the rock, so they give him an axe. He strikes the axe and says, "By Allah, you will conquer Constantinople," and we did, alhamdulillah, right? And he said, "By Allah, you will open Rome," and he said, "By Allah, you will open this city and that city." And then when he struck the last one, it was Rome, by the way. The entire axe split, and the Muslims were given solace and victory. And indeed, the people gathered, and Allah scattered them. This is happening before it happened again. The question is not the people. The question is you. We can sit very comfortably and think, we're all right, Jack. House is paid, mortgage is paid, kids going to university. There's more food. There's so much food in the fridge. I get a choice. Even myself, I was thinking, maybe I'll have the dessert after I have the breakfast. But yeah, we're all in that situation. We think we're okay. We're not. When we see those brothers and sisters who suffered for the sake of Allah on Qiyamah, we'll be crying when we see their station. Al-Hasan al-Basri said something. He said, if the kings of the world could see what Allah had placed in our hearts, from Rahman, Iman, and all these kind of things, they would send their soldiers to cut us open to take from this. But no, you can't take from this. A Sahabi wants to find what truly Iman is, what Iman truly is. He was asked Iman genuinely. Yeah? And he said, Iman is what happens when a conviction in the heart is melded or manifested, I would say, by actions in the limbs. When this happens, this process creates a sweetness in the soul that is called Iman. This is how it's produced. This is the mechanism of production for those who learn it from the Messenger. We need to raise our Iman. We need to realize our test in some ways is harder than their test, because all we have to do to lose out on the reward is do nothing. And there's no momentum. There's no momentum to push you. There's no momentum. So what do you have to do? You have to generate an internal momentum by connecting back with Allah and His Messenger. Build this masjid of yours. Do this work of yours. And then help those outside. Don't sit and rejoice in what you have. Right? Help those who are less than you. The Prophet ﷺ did mention that the hand above is better than the hand below. Why does Allah often, or almost inextricably link salah with zakat? Well, salah, you can be rich or poor and pray, right? But He's indicating or motivating you to be the zakat payer, not the zakat payers. These things are not to be found in the Quran, because the Quran is not a book of economics or these kind of things. Go out and you learn. Our father said, rahimahullah, right? This is, he said, business is not to be learned in the lecture theatre. You get your hands dusty. You go out and do your work. But those two indicate, and I'm just going to end the last point. Umar radiallahu anhu, another beautiful scene. Upon an occasion, Umar radiallahu anhu, at this point, the Muslims are the most powerful nation in the world, right? And he's the most powerful man in the world. And he had one cloak like this, and every time it would have a hole or have a problem, he would patch it himself. And at the end, it was more patches than thoughts. These are the men, may Allah be pleased with them, that led us. And he saw some men just chilling, right? We have other words that I can't use in the in this position for it, right? In the masjid, right? And he said, what are you doing? They said, نحن المتوكلون, we're trusting Allah. But أنتم, he said, but أنتم المتأكلون, you're the people who sit with fat bellies and eat. Get up and work, right? This attitude and this mindset was there. They didn't need to be told it. And for the final piece of advice, the young men won't like this, but they need to hear it. In terms of activity, and this is the spirit of this. I want those people, those fathers with it, right, to hear. When he was young, he could see his son being one of the resters. We normally use another term that it's not fitting to use the number. He's just resting on a certain part of his anatomy, right? Abdullah. So what he did is he picked him up and he kicked him out of the house. Now you can imagine the scene. Abdullah's crying, what have you done to my son? All that kind of stuff. He said, wait. He made him homeless. He went with Ahl Sufa. Within 15 months, he managed to pick up a trade and he managed to get married. And you can imagine turning to his wife and saying, see, I told you so, right? You need to generate activity for your children by giving them tasks worthy in doing, because boys are built to move. If we leave them to say, I'm not saying don't game all that kind of stuff before the kids start throwing their Xboxes at me, right? What I'm saying is, we need to be able to have activity and have a foresight for our youth. If we just sit them pretty and let our men not be raised and toughened, then we won't have that situation. Because indeed, right, it is from coal that diamond emerges. But how does diamond turn to coal? It's still carbon, isn't it? You crush it under heat, thousands of tons of pressure and thousands of degrees of heat, and then the coal turns into a diamond. And I'll end with a salutation upon our messages from Imam Busayri's masterpiece, where he said, Muhammad rajulun farajulun. Muhammad is a man like other men. Bal huwa yaqut wa nahnu hajarun. Rather, he's a ruby, whereas we are merely rocks. Allahumma a'izz al-Islam wal Muslimin. Allahumma a'izz al-Jihad wal Mujahideen. Allahumma ansur al-Muslimina fi kulli makan. Allahumma ansur al-Islam wal Muslimin. Ansur al-Muslimina fi as-Sin khasatan ya arhamar rahimin. Oh Allah, help the Muslims who are oppressed by the oppressors who are communists. Oh Allah, free them quickly. Oh Allah, strengthen them in their test and give us the tawfiq to help them and do everything we have from our body and our soul to liberate Palestine, to liberate China, to liberate the lands of the East and the West. Oh Allah, bless this town, bless the men of this town, bless the women of this town, bless the elders of this town, bless the children of this town, bless the children of the children of this town. Oh Allah, protect our children from all of the misguided, atheistic and satanic ideologies that teach them to take away not only from Islam but from their own fitrah. Oh Allah, protect our sisters' honor. Oh Allah, protect our brothers' izzah and protect our dignities. Bless us in our homes. Keep us safe from the shaitan. Give us the tawfiq to read the Quran and to understand and act upon it. Oh Allah, protect us in our trials of death. Oh Allah, those who have gone forward from us, oh Allah, have mercy upon them. Oh Allah, make the children who remain of the parents who are gone forward a sadaqah jariyah for them. Oh Allah, forgive those whom we love and gather us with the one that we love. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. In a land better than this land, in a place better than this place, so that we can drink from his hand as Ahl Sunnah and preserve us from bid'ah. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam wa aqimu as-salah. Inna as-salata ala al-mu'minina kitabun mawqut.